What are the key sourcing countries or regions for funds pouring into Vietnam at the moment?
Traditionally, based upon our contacts with distributors, and we know certain investors, of course, countries who have invested quite a lot in the, call it the equity market here are, or in the capital market in total, are in Asia. First of all, Asia. Countries like Korea, Japan stands out, but also Malaysia, Singapore. In the equity and private equity market, but also property, European investors, maybe to a lesser extent Americas, but certainly call it Asia and Europe are the biggest parts of it.
Is China part of it?
No. Well, the statistics are not fully available on that process, but China has restrictions in its investments, what they can do offshore. And China has been very much focused on domestic investments in the last few years. That might change over time, but for the moment, I would be very surprised if China would be a big investor in these listed markets. I don't think so, to be honest.
What about America? Why is America not in the picture? I suppose that America should be a very big investor into Vietnam.
I would not say that they are not investing in market, but if you look at the listed market and knowing that the Americans have very big institutional investors, whereas our listed equity market is rather small, so probably that's not the right instrument for that part.
What about what's happening in other neighboring countries at the moment? Are their investor base the same, or is it very different?
It's an interesting comparison. I would not compare Vietnam with all the countries, but if you look, for instance, countries which are a number of years ahead with the development of the mutual fund market, my sector, call it India, Malaysia, China, where they started 15 years ago with mutual funds. We started 5 years ago, as I explained. There it also started slowly. And only after 10 years you see the growth rates picking up and then becoming very interesting. So if I compare Vietnam with a number of these bigger economies in the region, then I see quite some resemblance between Vietnam and the early days like in India, China, Malaysia, Indonesia. Yeah.
Let's move into the future of Vietnam, because we've talked about past performances and we haven't actually seen a very nice picture of profitability. How do you expect to see the fund sector developed in the future? Are there any positive outlook from the government side as well as from the investor side?
Yeah, thanks very much for this question. That gives me the opportunity to talk a bit about the mutual fund sector as well. Although I must say that in Vietnam it's still a very small market. Of the total of the 12 billion assets which are managed by fund management companies, only 1% is retail funds. That's what makes us and that makes the whole sector very exciting, is that at this moment it might be a low percentage of mutual funds or what we call closed-end funds. But the government is in preparation or is preparing new regulation which would allow new instruments which are especially advantageous for the retail investors. That is what we call the so-called open-end mutual funds. And we expect that this introduction of these new instruments will give opportunities to retail investors to really start investing into the capital markets.
So it's in preparation at the moment, and the government will issue the circular very soon?
That's in the hands of the government. We have hope that we will see that this year, but the regulation is in draft stage. We as market participants, we see it is in the first place it's advantageous for the retail investors to give them more options, more opportunities to invest. But secondly, it also helps in establishing and strengthening the capital market in Vietnam, which we think is very important and which goes further than just the interest of the retail investor.
So you would expect to see a lot of movements on the market once the circular is issued. There would be a lot more open-end funds established in Vietnam?
Well, that will be then the first time that open-end funds for the retail market will be open. So yes, we expect that. It's difficult to say whether it will be a lot or whether it will be a gradual start. That depends upon a number of factors. It takes time to establish a new investment instrument, and investor education is extremely important and takes its time for that process.
Let's talk about Vietnam in regional perspective for the future. Do you see Vietnam still a very attractive destination for investors, or are you seeing some of the funds getting pulled out and divesting to other countries in the region?
No, long term, Vietnam is just a positive investment story. However, let's say investments has also its certain volatility. It will not go up or go down in one straight line. You need to look at it for the long term, and that is only a positive story.
Well, I like that message. It's a very positive message. But what are the key challenges that the fund sector is facing at the moment?
We are investors, and we would like to see the capital market modernized, strengthened, new instruments. For instance, the liquidity, the secondary market in both fixed income and to a certain extent equity as well, listed equity, can be boosted, can be strengthened in that process. New instruments like derivatives, a swap market, etc., are not always completely available. So in that sense, it's also important that the government continues to work on the modernization of the capital market, which they are doing, but of course we are also impatient investors in that sense.
Last question. Let's make it very quick. If you are addressing an audience of potential investors on the show, what would be your key message to them being a fund manager in Vietnam?
If you are there for the long term, not only look at what you just rightfully said, the past or the past performance, let's look at the opportunities. And then, let's say, after a downward period, which we have experienced in the last 1.5 years, there will be again an upward period as well. We hope that it comes soon. But if you're there in for the long term, then it might become an interesting investment opportunity.
So the key message there is look to Vietnam for the long-term prospect.
Yeah.
Don't look at past performances.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Thank you very much, Hank, for being on the show with us today.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Fund management has not been the best sector in terms of IRR shared by our guest speaker today. However, with the recovery of the global economy, the continuing growth of the Vietnamese economy, and the prospect of Vietnam's further opening up the fund industry from 2011, we have seen positive sentiment towards the development of the sector. I encourage you all to watch closely the movement of the sector in 2011 and 2012 for great investment opportunities. If you have questions for the show or for Hank, please send them to VIET@insidevietnam.com.vn. For past episodes and show updates, please visit Inside Vietnam on WordPress, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. My name is Phi Nguyen and I'm your host on Inside Vietnam. I really appreciate all of you who have been traveling the journey with Inside Vietnam thus far. I hope that random kindness and good hearts will bring us together at some time in the future in beautiful Vietnam.